Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. It is 10 o'clock, so we are going to go ahead and get started here. My name is Stephanie Tang, and I'm the Marketing and Communications Coordinator with AMSA. Joining me is our Director of Learning and Assurance, Alana Todoruk, and our guest speakers from WCB-Alberta, Carrie Johnston and Shauna Lee Green. Before we get started, I am going to go over a few housekeeping items. So first, attendees have been muted, but you are more than welcome to participate in the chat. We invite everyone to introduce themselves and chat amongst each other throughout the presentation as well. Second, there will be a Q&A at the end of the presentation. If you would like to submit a question, feel free to do so throughout the session using either the chat function or the Q&A function. We will be monitoring and make sure that those questions get answered for you. If you would prefer to ask your question verbally, please just raise your hand and we will go ahead and take you off mute when the time comes to ask that question. And lastly, if you encounter tech issues at any time, please reach out in the chat as well, or via the phone number or email that we will post in the chat for you. Myself and our client success team will be monitoring, and we are more than happy to assist. And without any further ado, I will pass it off to our team to get things started. Take it away, please, Alana.
Thanks so much, Stephanie. Welcome, everyone. Appreciate you making some time for us to share some information with you, and thank you to WCB for absolutely joining us today. Just to review a little bit of the learning objectives that you can expect to get out of the session today. We will explain what ICP is and how it differs from standard pricing, identify what to review before voting, go over any type of risks and the benefits that ICP has, and how they may affect different municipalities in terms differently. So they've got some size and claim variability that we're going to talk a little bit about that WCB will provide some more information on, and explain the repolling purpose. Next slide, please. So a little bit about me. I am the Learning and Assurance Director here at AMSA, and I'd like to invite you, next slide, that's great, Stephanie, thanks. I'd like to invite you to please explore our microsite. So there's a lot of key information in there. There's going to be a lot of information shared, definitely at the webinar presentation today. However, if you need to get some clarification or you're looking for some further deep dive information, please visit our microsite. We will be placing that link in the chat as well, if that's easy for you to access. And I will hand it over to Carrie.
Thanks, Alana. Good morning to everyone, and thank you for your time today. Thank you also to Craig and the team at AMSA for your support in coordinating this session. I'm Carrie Johnston, the Director of Employer Account Services at WCB-Alberta. I oversee employer account services, underwriting, premium audit, and claims audit. We have a few folks with us today who help with this information session who are available to answer any questions that you have at any time. And any questions that we don't answer for you today, please reach out to our industry support team. We have Shauna Lee Green from our industry support team. There's also in your repolling package, there is an email for the ICP team. And also you can reach out to underwriting. So you might already have previous relationships with various groups at WCB Alberta, and you can lean on those teams if you already have contact with them. But please feel free to reach out to industry support, the ICP team, or underwriting, and we'll route the questions internally to get back to you right away. So as Alana mentioned, the purpose of this session is to provide a clear overview of industry custom pricing, how it works, what changes under the program, and what that may mean for municipalities. If you're asking what is industry custom pricing, you are not alone. I have only been with WCB for just over a year, and I also asked that question for a while, and I've been in insurance for a while. But that concept was new to me when I joined WCB. And I also acknowledge that you, like me, do many things in the course of a day. So diving into the question of what industry custom pricing is and how it impacts your WCB premiums and your disability management, that's a big important item on your long to-do list, particularly when we've just moved from fire season to flooding season for municipalities. Our intent is to support understanding and inform participation in the current voting process by clarifying the structure and implications of the ICP program. So I don't forget to mention it later on, I cannot stress enough how helpful reading WCB's pricing guide is. This is your most important resource, along with the repolling packages that were sent to municipalities in June. And on that note, if you haven't received your repolling package, it may have been sent to another individual in your organization. So reach out to us to discuss whether we have the right contact for your repolling package. We've also seen that even though we limited the number of hyperlinks in the email and in the contents, it's still getting caught up in some organizations' spam filters. So that's also a possibility. We would have loved to fill those packages with a variety of helpful links, but in our experience, that increases the likelihood they'll get caught up in spam filters. So we've reduced that. But I want to direct your attention to WCB's website because we have a lot of helpful resources. There's employer fact sheets. There's a whole website devoted to the discussion of industry custom pricing and how it works. And of course, that WCB pricing guide. And then AMSA has also built an excellent website for ICP repolling. So to ground the discussion, we'll start with a refresher on WCB's basic premium pricing structure. So under standard pricing, we've even had the question of what is standard pricing, a totally reasonable question. Under standard pricing, WCB first sets industry premium rates every year based on the overall claims experience at the industry level. And then we apply the employer's payroll and the employer's claims experience to those industry rates to come up with the employer's premium rate and their overall premiums. So employers then experience impacts whether there's a discount or a surcharge applied based on how your performance is in relation to the rest of your industry average. So from this slide, just want to point out that standard pricing is the normal starting point unless an industry has chosen an ICP option. And then within standard pricing, employers still receive discounts or surcharges depending on their claims experience and the rules that apply to their pricing programs. As you'll see soon, one of our industry custom pricing programs impacts those discounts and surcharges. Performance matters under both standard pricing and industry custom pricing. ICP changes some of the pricing rules that sit on top of that base system. So the key point is that performance already influences premiums today. And ICP does not create that relationship. It just changes how directly it's reflected and through which pricing features. So I'll hand it over to Shauna Lee to explain what we mean by performance in this context.
Perfect. Thanks so much. So now, what do we mean by this performance? So in this context, performance comes down to three main areas. We've got injury frequency, so the number and severity of workplace injuries. We've got claims costs, so total expenses for medical care and wage replacement, any kind of benefits or services allocated to the claim itself, and return to work outcomes. So these are operational measures, and they're reflected in premium calculations over time. In this next slide, when you get a chance, Stephanie, perfect, thank you. So when we look at the key factors of performance, it's important to clearly understand what each of these topics mean. So for claim frequency, it's going to reflect how often injuries occur relative to other employers in the same industry. So one way to think of this is how many claims do you have per 100 workers compared to a similarly sized employer in your sector? So for example, if your municipality has 50 workers and you've had one claim in 2025, that equates to 2 claims per 100 workers. In contrast, maybe a larger municipality with 1,000 employees has 50 claims in a year. You would have 5 claims per 100 workers for that particular municipality. These are just hypothetical examples for today's session, but you can find some more details on how your organization compares to the industry overall in the employer and industry synopsis available through the MyWCB portal. So if you're curious what your frequency of claims are per 100 workers, you can go through the MyWCB portal and it can actually provide reports that confirm that type of information. We also mentioned that claims costs are a key factor in performance. So these are costs that can include medical aid, so that might be prescription medications, physiotherapy treatment, doctor's reporting, all sorts of things under that medical aid category. Might be wage replacement benefits, so any wage loss benefits that have been issued on the claim, rehabilitation, and also long-term benefit expenses. A major driver of these costs, however, overall is the return to work outcomes. So, specifically, how effectively injured workers are supported in their return to work and that return to work being productive. So, this might include modified duties when and where appropriate as well. These outcomes are then measured against the industry average using what we call the experience ratio. So Carrie had mentioned something called the pricing guide. It is available on the WCB website. It is a really good kind of explanation, especially when it comes to this experience ratio and how we compare you as an organization to others in the industry. This ultimately helps determine whether your organization is going to receive a discount or a surcharge on your WCB premiums. So with that foundation in place, Carrie's going to define what industry custom pricing is itself.
Thanks, Shauna-Lee. Industry custom pricing is an optional industry-based pricing program. It allows an industry to customize certain features of its pricing program rather than staying fully in the standard pricing model. ICP is a way to make premium adjustments more reflective of an employer's experience, which can increase accountability and strengthen the link between performance and pricing. The key thing to remember is that this is not an employer by employer choice. The decision is made through industry polling, which we'll explain a bit more later how that works. And if adopted, the decision on the ICP program applies across the entire industry classification. So next slide, I'll give you some history on why the program was introduced. So make sure, yeah. So industry custom pricing was introduced in 2008 as part of a broader move toward performance-based pricing. It gave industries the option to customize certain pricing features collectively rather than applying the same pricing structure across every industry. At a high level, it created more flexibility in pricing design while keeping the decision industry-based. There are specific benefits and drawbacks to each ICP program, which we'll discuss shortly. So you might be wondering, well, why do I have no recent memory of making this vote? And when the program was first introduced, employers and industries could always request repolling after being in their current selection for a minimum of 3 years. But it wasn't happening frequently. And so based on industry consultation in 2023, we formalized a regular repolling cycle. So that's why many of your organizations have been in your current ICP program for more than 15 years, and now you're being asked to repoll because that cycle has come back. For the cities, they repolled 3 years ago. So now we have regular repolling, and each employer is asked to submit a vote on your decision of your preference, whether to remain in the ICP program you're in or to return to standard pricing or some mix, because some of you are in multiple ICP programs. All right, so again, at a high level, so I'll just share why this all matters in the municipal context. Next slide. Thank you. So at a high level, your premium is influenced by two things: the industry rate and your own claims experience. Your industry decides collectively which pricing structure applies, while your organization's claims experience affects whether your premium moves up or down from that base rate. Regardless of whether you're in standard pricing or in industry custom pricing, better performance leads to lower costs. And I will turn it back to Shauna-Lee to talk more about.
I can speak to the next one. I think we normally
I'm
have
just making sure. I think I have my slides mixed up.
Okay,
so.
No worries. I don't mind.
Oh no, it's still me. Sorry. All right. So these are some, next slide has some basic principles of ICP. So ICP gives industries greater control over premium calculations compared to standard pricing. It recognizes different industries have unique risk profiles that benefit from these customized approaches. If your industry votes in favor, every employer participates regardless of the individual employer's vote. Your industry's preference is reviewed through repolling on a regular cycle now. Industries can request early repolling after the third or fourth year with sufficient evidence. So that's, as I mentioned, why the cities are repolling after 3 years. That 3 years ago, they asked to be repolled on a 3-year cycle. And then there are two primary options available under ICP. And so the next slide introduces the two primary ICP options. All right, so the first option is the experience rating option, which changes how strongly performance is reflected in discounts and surcharges. For industries that participate in this ICP-ER option, employers in the large business experience rating plan will have customized features in their pricing program that increase the maximum available discounts and surcharges from 40% to 60%. So in the standard pricing program, the available discounts and surcharges for industries that are in the large business program have a surcharge or a discount of up to 40%. In the ICP experience rating program, it increases those maximum available discounts and surcharges to up to 60%. So just to review the large business experience rating plan, that applies to employers with $15,000 or more in premiums over the past 3-year period. So for employers with premiums less than $15,000 over a 3-year period, they're in the small business experience rating program. So they're not impacted by the ICP-ER option. Their range of discounts and surcharges for employers in this group that remains at 5%. So our other program, other ICP program, we refer to it as the cost relief program, but it's the waiving cost relief option. It changes how one element of cost sharing is handled through a cost relief levy and cost relief treatment. So, and the next slide gives a little bit more detail on the financial impact of these two options. All right, so in the ICP experience rating option, there's no change to the cost relief levy. That cost relief levy for employers who are only in the ICP experience rating option, that cost relief levy remains part of your base premium. So just to reiterate, in the standard pricing program, every employer, every industry pays a cost relief levy. It's the cost relief, waiving cost relief program that removes that levy from your premiums. So for the experience rating option on the left, the focus shifts to discounts and surcharges based on your performance, as opposed to the waiving cost relief option on the right, where the cost relief levy is removed from your premiums, which gives you lower upfront premiums, but it does waive your eligibility for cost relief related to the aggravation of pre-existing conditions, which is just one type of cost relief. Okay, so why would industries choose to be in ICP waiving cost relief? This next slide shows the potential benefits and trade-offs to consider for ICP waiving cost relief. One feature is that lower base premium that I mentioned because the cost relief levy is removed. There also may be greater variability between employers in the industry where that specific category of cost relief no longer applies. So if your organization is really good at helping employers who have the aggravation of a pre-existing injury return to work as quickly as possible or find modified work, then the waiving of cost, that particular type of cost relief wouldn't give your organization that much of an advantage. So by being in the ICP-CR program, you're not paying the levy. You do absorb the cost of any claims that have aggravation of pre-existing condition, but it's more than offset by that levy for an organization in that scenario. One of the trade-offs to consider, though, on the right is that claims cost due to prolonged recovery from the aggravation of a pre-existing condition will remain in the employer's claims experience. And that could be all of the claim or a portion of the claim. So employers with higher than average claims of this kind, they might see an impact on their experience rating. All right. So a little bit more about ICP cost relief explained in the next slide. So some of those possible strengths, it keeps your claims costs more directly connected to the employer. So all that effort that you're going to help employers with aggravation of pre-existing conditions, return to work as soon as possible, or to be in modified work, you'll see the benefit of those efforts in spreading that cost across the industry. It creates a stronger reason for employers and to focus on safety and prevention and return to work to prevent those types of claims. And the industry base rate is lower because that cost relief levy is removed. And a lot of employers also find that under this program, there's less administration tied to identifying and approaching WCB to ensure that that type of cost relief is removed from your experience rating. We try to be proactive as much as possible, but it's usually that relationship between WCB and the employer that identifies these types of claims costs. So again, those trade-offs to understand with the ICP-CR program is that employers will not receive cost relief for that specific type of cost relief. And employers that in the standard pricing program would have benefited from that type of cost relief will see more of these costs stay in their own claims experience. And your premiums might vary more from year to year if you have a claim of that type of that injury coming in. And Shaunalee will talk more about that later. Okay, so I'll explain more about how the premiums are priced in these two options. All right, so again, we're talking about the ICP cost relief program. Cost relief allows for certain costs to be shared across the industry. And these shared costs are funded through a levy built into the base rate. So that describes the standard pricing program. But under ICP cost relief, that levy is removed from your premium, but more costs remain within your experience rating rather than being shared across the industry. So I think we've covered this pretty thoroughly. All right. So we can go to the next slide. So here's just a specific example of a levy. So in this case, for everyone on the call, none of your levies are 16 cents. We do have industries with a 16-cent levy, so we just use that as an example. So again, every employer in standard pricing pays a cost relief levy as part of their premium. The actual amount for a particular industry is outlined in your repolling materials. It varies from industry to industry based on the historical experience with this type of cost relief. The levy, I will point out, that's in your repolling package is an estimate of your year one levy. We would not go higher than that when we set your premiums for 2027. The levy would only apply in 2027 if your industry decided to return to standard pricing. And then in year two, so in 2028, the cost relief levy for 2028 would be based on the cost relief utilization in year one, which is 2027 in this case. So in this case, the levy that's used is an example of 16-cent levy. Again, that applies per $100 of assessable earnings, which is essentially your payroll. We have a really good employer fact sheet on how you determine what your assessable earnings is, but it's largely based on your payroll. So if you took an organization that has $100,000 annual payroll, you apply that 16 cents per $100, that creates an annual cost relief levy of $160. So that just goes to show how the levy is applied to your assessable earnings. So that covers how the cost relief option works, and I'll turn it over to Shaunalee so she can explain how the experience rating option works.
Perfect, thank you. So this slide outlines the possible effects and trade-offs under the experience rating option, or often what we refer to as ICP-ER. Before I get into the details of this, I do just want to highlight, kind of as Carrie mentioned earlier, that everything we're reviewing here applies specifically to employers who are part of that large business pricing program. So again, meaning organizations that pay $15,000 or more in WCB premiums over a 3-year period of time. So if you pay less than that, you're going to be in what's called that small business pricing program. Again, refer to kind of that pricing guide, but for today, just wanted to kind of highlight this is for that large business pricing program aspect. So when we look at industry custom pricing experience rating, or ER, this option offers the potential for larger discounts for high performing employers, which can be up to 60%, compared to the maximum of 40% under the standard pricing. However, it is very important to understand this is also a broader range of possible outcomes. Because this model places greater weight on your organization's performance, differences in the industry average can have a more significant impact. The trade off to consider is that if your performance is worse than the industry average, it could also result in a surcharge of 60% of your premiums. And I hope I said discount, so it can be a 60% discount or a 60% surcharge. In short, this option increases how strongly your individual performance is reflected, both positively through discounts or negatively through surcharges. So to make this practical, the next slide is going to show what this can mean in real terms. So under the experience rating option, the range of premium outcomes can widen based on performance relative to the industry. The key point is the total premium required across the industry is not going to change. What's going to change is how much that amount is distributed across employers overall, so each of you individually. This means if you are performing worse than the industry average, you will see a greater impact to your premiums as the organization compared to others in your industry. So it's really just kind of important to know when you're looking at ICP ER as an option, if you're doing really, really well, you have that opportunity for that 60% discount on your premiums, which is great. If you're not doing really well in terms of your performance and return to work outcomes, you could see up to a maximum of a 60% surcharge. So really just kind of keep those things in mind as you're looking to proceed with your vote. So the next slide is going to put this into a simple numerical example. So this example uses a simple base rate to illustrate how the adjustment range expands under ICP ER. It is very important to note the industry base rate outlined in this example is purely for illustration purposes, and it's not the current 2026 industry base rate for your industry. So just wanted to kind of highlight that this is just for an example. But let's imagine your industry base rate is $1.50 per $100 of payroll, or often what we refer to as assessable earnings. This is what the average employer would pay in your industry. Under standard pricing, with 40% maximum adjustment, whether that's surcharge or discount, the best performers might pay 90 cents per $100 of assessable earnings. So they're actually going to see a 60 cent per $100 of assessable earnings in discount. Or sorry, can't remember if it's 60 cents or 60%. Give me 1 second. I'll carry on with this. Well, the poorest performers are going to pay $2.10. So yes, sorry, again, the 60 cents per $100 of assessable earnings surcharge. Under the ICP ER, with the 60% maximum adjustment, the best performers could pay as low as 60 cents per $100 of assessable earnings, while the poorest could pay $2.40. So it's kind of looking at standard pricing. You might see 90 cents to $2.10 in standard pricing as kind of that range. Under ICP ER, you could see 60 cents to $2.40 in terms of that range. And again, that's per $100 of assessable earnings. What we're really saying here is better performance leads to lower costs, and industry custom pricing ER amplifies both the rewards and the accountability for performance. So the purpose of this example is not the exact number, it's to show the wider range of potential premium outcomes when looking at discounts and surcharges, comparing standard pricing to ICP ER. Next slide, please. So this slide summarizes the distinction between pricing changes in the workers' compensation system itself. So what changes under ICP is the pricing structure. And when we're looking at changes are either going to be to the discount or surcharge range or the levy and cost relief treatment. So what does not change is the broader system. Claims are still managed in the same system, the entitlement test does not change, and the employer performance can still be reflected under both ICP and standard pricing. So stepping back from the detail of this, the slide highlights what changes and what does not. So again, we're really just focusing on that pricing impact, but the way that your claims are managed remains the same. Next slide. Perfect, thank you. So now that we've walked through both industry custom pricing cost relief and experience rating and standard pricing options, I'm briefly going to explain how they are currently applied across the municipal sectors. So this slide shows the model is currently being applied in cities and municipal districts. These sectors are currently in the cost relief option, again, meaning costs due to aggravation of pre-existing conditions, which is just one of the types of cost relief, are not removed from your employer experience record. These costs remain included in your historical claims experience. As Carrie had mentioned, the levy used to fund this type of cost relief has been removed from your industry base rate. When it comes to ICP cost relief, all other types of cost relief, cost capping, and cost transfers are still available in this pricing program. So again, you're waiving that ability to request cost relief due to an aggravation of a pre-existing condition, but you are still eligible to request cost relief for things like concurrent conditions, delay in hospital admissions, third-party cost relief, all sorts of things like that. So it's just regarding the aggravation of a pre-existing condition. Next slide. Now for towns and villages are currently in both ICP options. So since 2010, so it's been quite some time, towns and villages have been participating in both the waiving of cost relief option and experience rating option of industry custom pricing. This means that cost relief due to aggravation of pre-existing conditions has been waived, and the experience rating adjustment range is also expanded. So really kind of taking a look at, for towns and villages, you're currently in both. And for cities, you're currently only in industry custom pricing cost relief. So just kind of outlining where you're currently at if you're not too familiar with that. But with all of this context, the next question becomes how an industry moves into or out of these different options. And I'll hand it back to Carrie to expand a bit further.
Thanks, Shauna-Lee. So a bit of an overview of the voting process. So the voting window is open. It's been open since June. It's open until the end of August 24th. And you're voting whether your preference for your organization is to stay in your current ICP option or options. Voting is weighted by assessable earnings. So more than 50% in favor is needed for the industry to stay in your current ICP programs. So yeah, it's voted by assessable earnings. Every vote matters. I will say that because I've heard some smaller employers say, well, it doesn't really matter. There's larger players in my industry, but we've seen many times the scenario where of the larger employers in the industry where one employer votes to stay and one employer elects to leave the program. So all the more reason for every single employer to submit a vote for their preference. Because 50% support is needed to remain in the ICP program. And if more than 50% of the employers, as assessed by their assessable earnings, vote to return to standard pricing, then we get a clear vote from the industry. So again, this decision affects all employers in your classification, making it important to understand the implications. And because we're repolling on a 5-year cycle, your decision over the next 8 weeks will determine what your pricing model is for the next minimum 3 years, but typically 5 years. Oh, and I wanted to mention too that for towns and villages, you're currently in both ICP programs. So when you vote during repolling, you're submitting 2 votes. One for whether you prefer to remain in the ICP waiving cost relief option, and a second vote for whether you prefer to remain in the ICP experience rating option. So for towns and villages, the end result will be that they'll either stay in both ICP options or remain in one and leave one, or potentially leave both. So those are independent votes. So be careful when you vote that you know which option you're voting on and whether you're voting to stay or to return to standard pricing. Okay, so this one just shows the voting process. So at a high level, that process is straightforward. The industry votes. The threshold is calculated based on assessable earnings. The decision is determined, and then any change is implemented for the next rate year. So for 2027, you'll either remain in your ICP program or programs, or you'll return to standard pricing. And then the next slide just shows it from the perspective of the industry that employers in the industry are being polled right now. Those votes, again, are measured using assessable earnings. More than 50% of favor is needed to stay or to leave, and then that result applies to the full industry. The next slide simply just shows our timing for this year. So polling opened in June. It closes at the end of August. We'll tally and finalize those results, and they'll be implemented for 2027. And you'll see the decision of your industry in your premium rate package for 2027 when you receive that later this year. Okay, so before we wrap up, Shauna Lee will bring this back to what remains within your organization's ability to influence.
Perfect, thank you. So early in this presentation, we talked about the factors that drive performance. Again, that was frequency of claims, costs, and return to work outcomes. What we have here are some of the operational areas that can affect performance outcomes over time. So first, prevention is really the best way to reduce claim frequency and therefore premium costs. So if you have the opportunity to prevent an injury from occurring, there's no need for a claim, which is great. Having strong health and safety practices and procedures in place is a really great way to influence this. It's also important to remind folks of safe work practices. So if you have a workforce that's been employed with your organization for years, if not decades, many components of their job may seem second nature, and maybe they put little thought into what they're doing on a day-to-day basis. Really be sure to remind folks that if they've been doing the same job for several years, they should always be vigilant about safe work. So whether that's proper lifting techniques, ensuring their tools and materials are in good working condition, or just being mindful of workplace hazards, really make sure that they are keeping an eye out for these things and addressing them as they come up. The second is early injury reporting can be very critical. So when the injuries are reported right away, it allows for proper medical attention and appropriate treatment to be provided. We always kind of look at it is, can we get the right treatment at the right time? This not only supports a faster recovery for the worker, but it also helps reduce overall costs of the claim by preventing complications or delays. Third, having a well-designed return to work program is also essential. Providing modified or alternate duties allows injured workers to stay engaged and productive while they recover. This also supports better outcomes for both the employee and your organization, and it helps manage the claim costs more effectively. It's also important to ensure that workers are aware that modified duties are available. So, what we often see is individuals will go to their family physician and indicate, my employer has no modified work available for me. We hear it all the time. This can often result in delays in recovery. Consider collaborating with different departments in your organization to identify different tasks or duties that could be completed in the chance that modified work is required. So I often refer to this as the dust bunny list. So if you've had a dust bunny growing in the corner of your office for several years, you haven't had a chance to clean it up, maybe delegate somebody to do those types of tasks. You've had folders kind of sitting in the corner for 3 years, somebody needs to file them or digitize them. So really just kind of start creating certain lists like this, as it can be really helpful in the long run. Finally, consistency and safe practices across departments is going to be key. It's important to ensure that there are no gaps or weak links in how safety is managed across the organization. A consistent approach helps reduce incidents overall and prevents specific areas from driving up your performance results. And we'll go to some key takeaways here in the next slide. So we do only have a couple more slides to go. However, I do want to circle back and summarize today's session. So one of the key things here is ICP, or industry custom pricing, is voluntary and decided through the industry voting. It changes how costs and variability are distributed, and it increases how directly performance is reflected in premiums. Municipalities can influence performance through operational practices, and the main consideration is how the model aligns with your organization. One of the things we've heard a lot is, well, how is me being in industry custom pricing helping or hindering me? We can't answer that for every employer. You've really got to take a look at your information, your stats, your data. A lot of great information is available through the My WCB portal. You can look at your claims. What types of claims do you have? How frequently are they occurring? So it's really going to be focused on that individual performance in terms of what's going to be the best option for you. On the next slide, if you want to explore anything further today, we've got a few really helpful links. I will see if we can just leave this slide up for a minute or two if anybody wants to scan the QR codes. If you're currently entering from your phone, I believe, and Olana or Stephanie, you might be able to confirm, there is a copy of this presentation that will be going out. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. So this will be sent to all of the attendees as well as posted on our ICP microsite, and the link for that is available in the chat.
Amazing. Thank you so much for confirming. So AMSA also has a fantastic microsite. WCB has a website as well with more information about industry custom pricing. If we have any questions or concerns when it comes to the return to work process, we've got something called occupational injury service, modified work agreements. If you're ever thinking, how do we kind of look at our overall performance and how do we improve our disability management practices? The team that I work with, industry support, we're always happy to help kind of create something for or with you to help improve that. But really, when we're looking for today, it's looking at what is going to best impact you as the employer when we're doing this industry custom pricing repolling. So lots of different information, great workshops, all sorts of things and links that you can go to from there. And if we can go to the last slide here. If you're thinking, okay, this is all great, but how do I follow up? There is a email address that's going to be listed here. We'll kind of keep it up for a couple minutes. If you have any further questions when it comes to industry custom pricing, if you just want to kind of debrief a little bit, have more of a conversation about it with regards to your specific account, you can always reach out to that email address and one of the industry specialists will follow up with you, just to kind of help explain the process further. But from my end, thank you all so much for attending. I will pass it off to Carrie for any final words, and then I'm sure we'll leave it with Stephanie and Alana.